one of the reasons why we push shared parenting bills is to reduce parental conflict. Because if you pit one parent against the other in a winner-take-all, loser-lose-all battle, you're creating conflict, and that's not good. We don't have to have one person win and one person lose, because in the end, it's the kids that lose.
Welcome back to In Focus Kentucky. I'm Mario Anderson. On today's episode, we are taking a look at House Bill 528, which is now Kentucky law, that encourages joint custody and equal parenting time in custody cases after a divorce or separation. And we are continuing the conversation with Matt Hale from the National Parents Organization and Dr. Ryan Schroeder, Sociology Department Chair at the University of Louisville. Once again, we appreciate you all joining us here on In Focus Kentucky.
Thank you, Mario.
And Matt, let's talk about this new joint custody law and how it applies to parents who may have been involved in some sort of domestic violence or some type of crime that may have been involved. How does this law affect those?
Well, that's a good question. And domestic violence is a situation where it would override the presumption of shared parenting. If you have a finding, it can't simply be an accusation, but if you have a finding of domestic violence, then this presumption does not apply. And then the court would look at the case differently. It would say, you know, what's in the best interest of the child without that presumption, and it would start fresh.
And Matt, you obviously, we've discussed that you're the Kentucky chair of the National Parents Organization. So since you all have been having this conversation about this need for the legislation, what feedback have you been hearing from people out in the community about the need for the law?
Well, before we started, before the law got passed, there were a lot of people who were really hopeful for shared parenting. There were a lot of people that heard that this was being considered, and there was a real groundswell of support. We saw it from mothers, fathers, lawmakers, judges, throughout the entire state. It was very well supported across the board, and there were a lot of people who joined in quickly, because it is, as I mentioned earlier, a good combination of common sense and research.
Was there any negative feedback or people that were concerned or had questions about it during this entire process?
Well, I think the biggest concern that people had was that we were the first state to take the step to shared parenting, and you know there was kind of a caution there. You know, why hadn't this been tried before? But what helped Kentucky was that we passed temporary orders for shared parenting in 2017. And it was very well received, very popular. The judges liked it, the family court attorneys liked it, the families liked it, and that emboldened our lawmakers to take the next step into permanent custody.
Let's talk with you, Dr. Schroeder, about your personal kind of connection to this as well. For our viewers that may not be aware, how does this, ring home closer to you?
One of the more interesting things about this is that the citizens that were involved, nearly all of them had some sort of personal interest in this law. I, on the other hand, do not necessarily have a personal interest. My wife and I have been married now for almost 17 years. We have wonderful teenage girls. So I didn't have a personal interest in this. My interest in this was simply twofold. Number one, to bring research to bear on public policy, and number two, to help improve the lives of Kentucky families that happen to be going through a divorce. Now, I did grow up in a home that was divorced, so I understand what it's like to be in a situation with a traditional custody arrangement. The every other weekend and the Wednesdays of every week is what we experienced, basically, my sister and I as children. And we know how difficult that can be. And like the research shows, most people who are in that custody arrangement, most children who are in that custody arrangement prefer or wish to have more contact with what we call the non-residential parent. And I think my sister and I were the same way growing up.
Matt, how does this new law affect minority families? Is it a big impact at all that you are aware of? Or?
Well, the law affects minority families in a lot of the similar ways that it does, the other people. It brings in situations where people who have gone through family court have had some concern about whether the judges apply the laws fairly. And we have a minority outreach director, Jason Griffith, and he has really gone out and talked to many people about this and brought in a lot of good viewpoints. And polling shows that minority families very much support shared parenting, that they understand that too much judicial discretion can be a negative issue sometimes. And also an issue that Jason has brought up that I think that some of us hadn't considered was that about 80% of minority families have the African American is the male. And there's the perception in society that men are not necessarily treated fairly in family courts sometimes. And when you have what Jason would consider the double issue of race and gender potentially stacked against you, that makes the shared parenting law particularly powerful for African American families.
Well, Matt and Dr. Ryan Schroeder, we appreciate both of you all joining us here on In Focus Kentucky and bringing it to light and providing information about this new law here in Kentucky.
Thank you, Mario.
Now, coming up next, we'll introduce you to a mother of 7 who says Kentucky's new shared parenting law will reduce stress on children of divorced parents. But first, your local Weather on the Ones forecast is right after this break.